Okay, so I'm going to go back to my processing window. I'm going to save this as, this is version 3, or exercise 3, ball class. All right, so the way we start creating a class is that we have to go to this part of the toolbar here and make another tab, right? This is the processing sketch, kind of top level sketch, and then we have to organize our classes in new tabs off to the side. So I'm going to click here and say new tab. The name for this is going to be ball. So we're going to go from thinking about what we see on the screen as circles to actually understanding them as a type of object called ball. And make sure that you capitalize the first letter. Conventionally, our classes start with capital letters, right, as opposed to everything else generally starts with a lowercase letter. Okay, so inside of our ball class, we need to first set up the basics of how our class is going to be structured, right? So at the top level, we're going to first say, what is this called? Well, this is a ball, right? So we're going to define the class name, all right? After we've done that, we can go ahead and define the class variables or properties, all right? Again, a class property is a variable. It's just that the terminology changes whenever we get into classes as opposed to just writing line-by-line programs. Okay, so we'll call these class properties, and I'll put the variables inside of a parentheses, so that's reinforced. All right, those are our properties. Then we're going to define the class methods, and these are functions. All right. Below that, we're going to say, well, there's also going to be two types of methods, right? The first being, I have to have an update method. This is the primary method for this class. Everything after that is going to be secondary. So we'll just say secondary methods. Okay. Now, we said that we wanted to call this ball, so we're going to go ahead and start at the top, and we're going to say that this is called class ball with a capital B, open curly brackets, and then at the very bottom of this window, we're going to add a close curly brackets. So if I hit Control-T, we'll see everything tab over that's inside of our curly brackets, right? So we define the class name, just generically ball. Now you want these things to be simple but clear in terms of what they are. So we're using a kind of analogy to the real world, a ball. You might think that we're going to use a function called bounce, and we are, because that's going to define the behavior of our ball. Okay, so let's define the class properties. Now these are going to be all of the things that came from the previous exercise when we were working with the x position, y position, speed, etc. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take all of this from my main tab here, Control X, and bring that back over to the class, right? So this is going to be, these are my class properties. I lost part of my code there. All right, define the values for position and speed. That looks good. Define a radius. Oh, there's the rest of my code. Okay, and those are going to be all of the properties that are assigned to this particular class. All right, the next is that we're going to define the class methods. And the first one is going to be update, right? And then everything else afterwards. Well, what are the methods that are going to describe how our ball should act, right? Well, if we go back to our main tab, those methods are going to be exactly what we see down here, right? we're going to take void bounce and void draw, Control X, cut, bring them into the ball class, and paste them down below in the secondary methods. Now, we talked about scope, right? All of the variables that are here need to be defined within the block of code where they exist, right? So, or above them at least, right? So if we're using position and radius, those are all things that are being defined within our class, so that's great. Height and width are actually properties related to the display window, and those can be used anywhere. So both of these options here should work without much change, right? The function bounce and the function drag should both work without any change inside of our class. But what we do need to do is update. Each time the draw function is called, we need to update any balls that are inside the display window. So what we're going to do is we're going to create our primary method called void update, open and close parentheses, open and close curly brackets. All right, and inside of update, all we're going to do is just call to the secondary methods. So the first thing we're going to do is bounce, open and close parentheses, then we're going to apply drag. And now there's one more that we don't have that we also need to do because we didn't encapsulate it in a function yet, and that is to move, right? We need to update the position of the ball each frame. So I'm going to go back over to my main tab here, and I'm going to grab this part, update the position of the circle, cut, and I'm going to, in the secondary methods, include a function called move. All right, so all that's going to do is update the position and speed. So I can, in my update method, we can call to the move method. All right, so now we're moving, bouncing, and we're applying drag. All right, we're almost there. All right, the last thing we need to do is we also need to say how this class of objects will look, right? Well, the way we did that before is just right before we created our ellipse, we defined the stroke and the fill, etc. So in the same way as we did with the move, we're going to bring all of this, draw the circle block of code, cut it, bring it back into the ball, and at the bottom, before the last curly bracket, we're going to say void render. This is how we want our ball objects to look whenever they are being used inside of our display window. So now we're using void render. So we've got no stroke, we've defined the fill, ellipse mode by center, and then the ellipse by X position, Y position, and radius. So this will successfully define a class of objects called ball, right? Okay, so this part's complete. Now we need to go back and be able to use the ball class and restructure what we have going on here inside of the main tab. Notice how there's not much here. That's actually really great because it allows us to focus on what's important. And it allows our program to operate very clearly in terms of us being able to read what's happening and sharing the file with someone else.